Simon Majumdar, who's been a friend of ours for like almost a decade, right, Simon? We've worked together. It's been close to a decade.
Yeah, I think it's probably near 11 years.
Yeah, it might
It's a long
be.
time.
Yes, it's been a long time, and we so appreciate the relationship that both organizations have with you, and so anyway, and I always love this too. It's like in his bio, it's like it's so long to read. It's like author, broadcaster, food writer, celebrity chef. He's got his podcast, but I would say the thing I would add to it mostly is you're really a historian. I mean, when you dig deep into something, and that's where your past as a book publisher, and maybe your passion comes into play, is, if you guys ever really want to know anything about the history of gin or some other wacky ingredient, Simon has the he's got the detailed knowledge of whatever that ingredient or item is and how it's used. And I really appreciate that. And then we have Kelly Dykhuizen. She's a senior manager. That title is very minimalistic for what you do. But it is, of customer experience at Datassential. But she's such an expert on food trends, and we've created a great relationship with you over the last couple of years, right? And I just love when you come to our events, and she'll be at our event in Los Angeles for the ICCA Summit. Simon's going to be with us in Santa Fe, and we'll talk about that later here in the webinar for the GCIA Culinary Combine. So anyway, let's get started. What we've started talking about a little earlier too is just fine dining in general and kind of where it is. And Simon, why don't you talk about, because most people were not on when you said earlier your feelings about fine dining in Los Angeles.
Well, I think that fine dining in Los Angeles really only exists with about 2 or 3 or 4 places, the Spargos, Pajoli isn't, but it's close to that in terms of, it makes really special food. And I know you're going to explain to people about Pajoli. You could probably go and have a dinner there as well. But places like that, I think, are failing in New York, in LA now. And people prefer to go to places like Funke, which is terrific, and the food is very good, but it's not a fine dining. It's a very laid back scene up in Beverly Hills. I'm sure you know Funke right now.
Yeah, Devin. But also, doesn't he have a Michelin star? He's got it, right?
Oh no, he's got a Michelin star. He's got one for Felix, I believe, as well. I'm not sure about that. So, but a Michelin star. People don't understand, I don't think anyway, what Michelin means. They paid for them to come into LA. So that's because they were going, we're LA, we need to have some Michelin things getting mentioned. But I don't think Michelin actually means anything in LA. I tell them, I say this when I go on the sites, I always go, it doesn't mean anything here, because what things are here are things about the ethnicities. Those are what are and they are this. That's what LA is fantastic. Right. You can go to the Philippine area, down by Agor and all those places. You can go down there, and they have a range of hundreds of Filipino restaurants down there. You go to Koreatown, that's a 8-9 block area of different Korean. You have a blood sausage, maker and a restaurant. You have you have a barbecue, but most people just have a Korean barbecue. We have everything. We have the pork neck soup place, and hundreds of them. We have a lot of them. We go to China, to the Chinese area, San Gabriel, but we'll have Cantonese, we'll have Hunayan, we'll have all these places, and that's where I think LA is almost unbeatable than anywhere else in the US. But it's not. For me, anyway, it's not Michelin. I don't, for me, Michelin doesn't mean anything here. I never look at it as if anything's a Michelin star. I don't. In other countries and in New York and in Chicago, I would, but not in LA.
That'd be cool for Kelly.
A,
Yeah, let's have Kelly chime in on that as your feelings in Chicago about, the Michelin stars.
I agree. I think it kind of guides you, because I think when you think of restaurants in Chicago, especially when you think of fine dining, it's like you have the Alenias and the Next of the world that come to mind that really, I feel like, were the foundational restaurant scene in Chicago and really kind of put it on the map, essentially. And now what you're seeing is, again, other chefs who did their time there come and opening up their own restaurants and creating their own restaurant groups and kind of spiraling from that. It really has become a very foodie city. But what we're seeing kind of regionally is very different than what you'll see in LA, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. As you know, my opinions of Orlando, and I apologize for anybody on who is from Orlando, including the people in the room with me in the office. But you know what? Michelin started here 2 years ago. And the problem I have with where Michelin has gone, hopefully there's nobody on for this, and I know they're not, is like here, the only ones that have gotten Michelin stars, they're all Japanese. They're all extremely expensive, $250 per person for food alone, not including beverage, right? And it's like, I don't know, I think they're doing themselves a disservice, right? Because the people that do want to see this, and the, average, person who's maybe saying, I want to go to a Michelin star restaurant, can't afford to go. The Bib Gourmands are great because you can have the sandwich shops and those kind of places that pop up there. But again, our city is new to it, but it seems to be so slanted. And it's just, and again, Orlando's gotten better. I was not the biggest fan of Orlando's dining scene years ago. We have certainly gotten better, and it deserves some, credence for some of the restaurants here that are really doing a good job, but they're not even considered in that. But we'll get off of that because we're not here to talk about Michelin stars. What we are here to talk about first, go ahead, Simon. Yeah.
No, but just to mention, because Kelly mentioned Alinea and Next, which are great, but the chef from there is the person who I put Kevin in touch with yesterday, who's now moved to LA, and he's got this restaurant called Pajoli, which is he's now doing it as a French style bistro. And so he's gone from being the head chef at Alinea, where he worked with Grant and all of those people. He's now at Next, where he was the head chef at Next. But he's now come to LA, where he's doing a very great, I think it's one of the best restaurants in the country, but all he's doing is kind of bistro food. And you're going, that's why he's come to LA, because he could do that in LA and do it really easily, or not easily, but without. And I think that's where LA fits in. But sorry, I just wanted to
that's cool.
throw that in.
And I think that's kind of happening around the country with the fine dining guys. This goes back, I'll swear to you, this is early days of ICCA, and we were in Boston. And, one of the major chefs there, fine dining chefs, said, you know what? This small number of people that come into my restaurant, okay, I don't want to name the restaurant, but it's a small number of people that come into my restaurant, he said, is nothing. He said, so he opened a pizza joint in his neighborhood. And he said, I did this because, I go to my, baseball games and soccer games with my kids, right? And everybody's like, I've never been to your restaurant. So he then, and again, this is probably at least 15 years ago, he then said, I wanted to open a restaurant that everybody can enjoy my food. Right. And I think that was very early on in this trend that we're seeing a lot more now, which are these fine dining chefs going, hey, I want something everybody can enjoy. I want something they can afford. I want something they can come in and have fun. Right. And they can see their neighbors and do those kind of things. So I think it's a great change in our environment. And it really lends into the chain environment, too. Because a lot of chains are more, casual. They're affordable, and they, incorporate the community into what they do.
Yeah, I think we're seeing again that trade down. Just again, given consumers' concerns around inflation and discretionary spending, and I can't dine out every Friday. I can't take my family to dinner, but when I can, I want that to either be that special one time a month, but it might not mean I can't go to fine dining, but I trade down to go to casual, but that expectation is still there where I get a really good meal, I get the good experience. And so that's just a way of, I think, bringing that down to the level of like meeting your consumer where they're at, meeting that demand where it's at. And I don't know that we've totally recovered post-COVID to being, again, we're a casual society. It's hard to get people going to the office. It's hard to get people to put on not sweats to like leave the house. So it's creating that.
No, it's true.
More approachable for people too.
Yeah. And adding to that, I will say I had a great conversation with Vandy. I think it's Asabahu is how you say her name, from Ayari Thai, who does have a Michelin star, ironically. But anyway, she's like so passionate about what she's doing. And she is so understanding of the upcoming generation of diners. And she's like, it's got to be experiential. It's like, you have to have something here that, you know, it captures them in a new way. It's not just sitting down at a table. It's got to be the people you're with. It's got to be this conversation at the table. It's something that, you know, Instagrammable. We all know that. It's like, it's all of that. And she was like, this is what's really happening in the world that she is in. And she's going to be a big part of one of our culinary road trips, but also on the panel of chefs that we're going to have in LA, talking about, you know, what we're looking at today and how you appeal to. And I can only imagine, Simon, you can talk to this way better than we can, or I can for sure, is, I mean, LA is such a competitive market, right? And it's like between, you know, the problem is multiple things. I mean, it's like all the different choices of restaurants, but it's also the hassle of getting there. Right. So you could have a restaurant that I want to go to, but it's 10 miles away and it takes me an hour to get there. And I'm like, I'm not doing that tonight. Right.
An hour? Are you, that's nothing. Gosh, that an hour is nothing. It takes us an hour to walk to Culver City, and that's just it. No, it does. But I'm joking. But so, for example, we do have lots of different areas. So the closest place to us is Culver City. We walk to Culver City, and it's near Sony Studios. And so most of their things there are going to be lunch. It's always going to be about lunchtime. And in the evening, it's probably a lot slower because they've got now probably about 25 different restaurants, and people go there, but they're Shake Shack. They are, Sarah, I've forgotten her name now, Chang, who has a noodle restaurant. No, not P.F. Chang. It's another. You've got a group called Piccalilli, which is it's actually an English Indian word, but anyway, it's nothing to do with what this restaurant is. But that's a new chain that's opening up. There's another place that's a Jamaican chain that's opening up, and so they're going into these places, but only at lunchtime. And if I go up there in the evening, it's probably a little quieter, much quieter. But if you go to Silver Lake, that's packed in the evening. Yeah. But we can't even get there because it's, I don't know, 4 miles away, maybe more, but it takes us 2 hours to get there. We can't. We just can't. So what you tend to do here is to choose one or two places. For us, it's this Culver City and Santa Monica. We'll probably go down there, and we'll probably go up to Beverly Hills because the restaurants there, apart from Funke, apart from other places, aren't actually that good. It's just, it's Beverly Hills.
It's real estate.
That's where you go.
Yeah.
Real estate. So that's what we're doing, so we're going to a very small area of all the restaurants. When I used to be the critic for Time Out, I'd go to a lot more around the place, but none of them, quite frankly, were much good.
Yeah.
They weren't.
But you've taken me to some really good restaurants, I will say that, like you said, in Beverly Hills and also the Santa Monica area and whatever, right? And Venice Beach, like Simone, that we went to, which I love, which is really Simon, right? Simone. But it was a great restaurant. I loved it.
Oh, and Matu. which
Yeah,
is, I
Matu
hope
was
you're going to.
fabulous. Right.
Matu is this restaurant in Beverly Hills, and you're going, it's in Beverly Hills. It's opposite Maud, which is Curtis Stone's restaurant, which, but you go into this place, and I've been there now probably 30 times. And you met Scott, and everything he does there is a perfection. But what he knows, what he does is he does a dinner, which is either a set dinner or you can order a la carte, but I order a set dinner. But then at the bar, he has just one thing he makes. He makes the Wagyu cheese steak.
Yes.
And it is the most fantastic. You had one, didn't you?
We did. We had it for dessert.
Yeah.
We did. We hate the meal. We had it for dessert.
But he makes it out of the Wagyu. It's from New Zealand Wagyu. He serves it as it should be in small portions. None of this, they mix it with Angus and it's about this big, because Wagyu shouldn't be that way. But he has it, and I often will go, here's the meal, which is spectacular, but I've got to go and have a cheesesteak. And what I've just found out now, if I take like one bite out of it, he allows me to take the rest home, and then I'm very good about it because I have it the next day. But I'm saying that in these places, I can find one or two places like Pajoli, like Matu, like Funke, and they're in a certain area, but there's not much else. And there's lots of restaurants. There's just not much else.
Yeah. So, and Kelly, this is probably a good thing because Simon, you brought up a little bit earlier about, the fact that there's more of these chains that are popping up all over LA and doing all that. Kelly, let's go to your presentation. So Kelly's going to be speaking in our event, and we are not going to blow the entire conversation of what she's going to have in front of us at LA, but she's going to give you a little tease of what you're going to see. And there's some things in there we'll talk about afterward that actually blew me away when I first saw it. So
a nice LA smog. Which hopefully will not be that bad when we're there. Here's fingers crossed for good weather. If you are a Datassential subscriber and you have access to Report Pro, we actually did a dive into some LA restaurants last fall. So some of them are actually going to be stops on our tour when we're there. So definitely worth taking a peek at that issue ahead of your trip. And what I thought was interesting, this is just a fun fact, if you read that I didn't know, what I thought was pretty ubiquitous and I'd never really thought very hard about was the hot fudge sundae. It was actually invented in LA in 1906 at a restaurant called C.C. Brown's. So fun fact for everyone this afternoon. But when we look at, again, some of those terms that we tend to see on local restaurant menus in LA, on those independent restaurant menus, more so than any other part of the US, are things we see a lot of Mexican terms. So we see majaca, which is kind of like a dried jerky, beef or pork, but you see like carne asada, burritos, breakfast burritos, horchata, chorizo. Chinese chicken salad is another interesting one if we're looking at other things that were invented in LA. So some kind of a little preview of some of the things we'll be seeing there. What I think is also interesting, and this is where we were talking about before everyone hopped on the phone, is when we look at the makeup of the restaurant landscape in LA and comparing it to the US average, it's slightly more heavy on chains than it is on independents. And I think that caught us all kind of off guard initially, because I think LA has this, again, the fine dining halo associated with it. But think about the greater area. What constitutes a chain is really, again, things with more than 2 or more units, but you have the Starbucks, the In-N-Outs, the kind of, again, that hub for almost national and regional chains on the West Coast being in that LA market. What isn't surprising, what I think is what we're going to dive even further into when we're in LA, is looking at those ethnic, those global restaurants, which you are way more likely to see in that LA market than you are in the general US. But what that looks like is a little bit different. So if we pull the percentage of restaurant units by cuisine type, not surprisingly, American cuisine makes up about 1/5 of the restaurants there, Mexican about 15%, and then down from there. I cut us off on things that showed on more than 1.5 or made up 1.5% of the restaurant landscape there. Again, it is those kind of US cuisines, non-global cuisines generally at the top other than Mexican. But when you look at that index, so what cuisine types are you more likely to find in LA than other areas of the country? That's where you start to see those global flavors that Simon was talking about. And those mom and pops that really do so well are things like Korean or mixed ethnicities. So that's your mashup, global cuisine mashups, other Asian. So kind of, again, Filipino, things like that, Japanese, Thai, Mexican, Mediterranean, South American. And so you're starting to see some of those become more prevalent there than you will find other parts of the country. And so it is kind of that leaning into the melting pot that LA really is, and using that as kind of a platform for understanding, hey, what flavors, what formats, what cuisines are going to start to trend here and then migrate into other parts of the country.
It is definitely how we feel about LA, and why I think our board was so excited. I'll start bringing some of the ICCA board members on here soon to actually get involved in the conversation as well. But I think that's one of the reasons that LA is so appealing, is because of the ethnic cuisines. While I do that and bring some of them on, I know that Kelly and you, Simon, you both talked about the difference between ethnic cuisines in an area like Los Angeles and some other areas in the country as well, because it's not just Korean, it's not just Japanese, it's regional within those countries that also. So why don't you guys expand on that while I bring some of the other people on?
Well, I think two things I have to say about that. One is it's going to be regional within the area. So within Mexico, we'll look at all the different areas. Within India, we'll look at a few, not kind of like Britain, but a few, but Korean a lot. But one of the things I wanted to mention as well, that one of the things that's happening in LA more than anywhere I've seen is they're crossing. So you'll have a Korean and Mexican, maybe two people get married, and they will do something, and it will be really special. So I mentioned to you, I think yesterday or whenever we last had a chat, there's an area called Sawtelle, Sawettle, Sawtelle. It's a street. It's very close to here, and we go there sometimes. And that's got Filipino, it's got Mexican, it's got Japanese, but often they're intertwined with who's marrying who. So I think that's an interesting thing as well, because we have so many people coming from different nationalities here. And so I think if you have chance to go to Sawtelle, it's an amazing restaurant. It's got Be Sweet, which is a Filipino bakery, and then you go further on, and it's got Mexican areas, and that's a really good street to drive down, or even to stop and have a sandwich or whatever you can do down there, and that's a fantastic area. But going back to the other point, and surely Kelly can help me here, but we've got so many. The Mexican would be the easiest place to start, because we have here the people from every part of Mexico, and they're coming in and opening their own style restaurant. If I leave my house right now, I can walk into a Oaxacan place. I can walk down the corner to I can't remember what they'll all be called now, but a Mexican city place around the corner. I'll walk around the corner from those. There's another place, and they're all very specific about what they do, and they're very different to the other places that are doing it. So I think that's something that we have in LA that other people are probably only just starting to get, if they are. Kelly, what do you think?
I think that's something especially we've seen coming out of COVID. And because we couldn't travel, I think one of the ways that we saw people traveling was through like watching YouTube videos and TikTok, and like learning about all of these places globally and all these global dishes and all these global flavors. So there was pent up demand to like go out and try all that stuff when you could again. And so we've seen that happen. The other thing I think we've seen with some of that, and Simon, to your point, is that chefs want to cook it's their version of comfort food. It's the food I grew up with, and they want to bring that to the masses. And as we've seen the demographics change within the country, again, it's becoming more non-white. Children are growing up in multi-generational households where they're learning the flavors that that, that grandma and grandpa make on a Tuesday night. And so we've seen like Taco Tuesday is standard for younger consumers, but it's street tacos. It's not like the Tex-Mex tacos out of a box that like I grew up eating in lovely Midwestern Indiana. It's something that's authentic. And so as that population continues to age and become the mainstream and become that dominant consumer, those are the things that they're going to be looking for. And those aren't going to be things that are, as we talk about, crazy out of the box, would not pass in middle America. Those things are going to be happening more and more in middle America because as that population migrates, that's what they're looking for.
Well, Taco Tuesday is an interesting one because you're talking about social media and how that impacts and is impacting. And I'll tell you, so if you go on my Instagram, probably most Tuesdays, I will post some tacos that I go and get at either at a street vendor. And that's the other thing that we have here. If you go through all the car parks going around, or you go to a street somewhere, people just put up a thing and put up a tent, and the officers don't tell them not to, and they start serving the what they do there, and they're from different parts of the thing as well. Or you go to this just down by UCLA, USC Stadium. There's a whole place that's all you actually think you're in Mexico. It's so, and that's fantastic because they have all the stalls, and I mean that is like being in Mexico. So I think we're seeing all of these places now, and that's a place, if you have time, you should go and see as well. It's honey, can you tell me the place in Mexico?
Yeah, while you're doing that, while she's doing that, it's like on that front too. The one thing we talked about too in a prelim call of this with Simon and Kelly, and actually with our board, so we have Alex and Karen on as well. So you guys ask questions or chime in here too, because one of the things that came up with the board was, what's going on with food trucks in LA right now? Because we did an event, it was our 10th anniversary, so it'd be 11 years ago, with Roy Choi when it was hot, right? It was like a couple of years in. From the craze of these high-end food trucks and where it came from, and then where it is today. Because back in that day, it was crazy in LA. I mean, people were waiting in lines for an hour plus, and I don't even know how they had that much food in a food truck to serve that many people. But Roy explained that to us. But it was like, now it's different. I mean, it was kind of a craze, right? It was faddish, but it's still there, and it helped launch a lot of people into bricks and mortar restaurants. So you guys want to talk a little bit about that, and food trucks also in Chicago, Kelly, as well.
Yeah,
that.
I think again, COVID killed a lot of it in Chicago. Chicago is kind of notorious for making it very, very challenging to open a food truck and operate one here in the city. So we are not necessarily the mecca, so to speak, of food trucks, but we do have several of them that have existed. And there's a couple of them that the one that I think of that comes to mind immediately is there's one, it's called 5411 Empanadas. And they have a handful of food trucks. They've been able to open a handful of brick and mortar locations out of that. And all they sell is nothing but empanadas. So we've seen like concepts like that be sustainable. There's one that does dumplings and bao and kind of other like dim sum, which is another one. But again, I think the thing we've seen with food trucks as well is kind of, again, as the price point of them rises, I think one of the things that was attractive to consumers initially with them was that it was seen that they were a very good value. But now if I'm going to a food truck and getting a burger and fries and it's $20 and I'm not getting that experience and it's taking me forever and the quality might be kind of ish, like, is that worth it to me? Or do I just go to a restaurant where I can sit down and I'm still going to spend $20, but I'm going to have a much more enjoyable overall dining experience and the food quality is probably going to be a little bit more standardized, a little bit better to me. So that's one of the big challenges we've seen around them in them really truly rebounding.
Yeah. And before we go to you, Simon, I want to shine something in which really blew me away. So again, this food truck thing, or even food carts, as you mentioned, Simon, things like Halal Brothers, right, in New York, who made a name for themselves. Yeah. We just did an event in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I'm walking down the street and there was one in Vancouver and you're like, wow. And so think of that transition from, all the way across the continent into a different country, right? That started as a food cart.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, that is beginning to. What we're seeing now in LA, I think, is better, because what happened is the food trucks, when I first moved here from Great Britain, is when they got, and I remember writing an article about it for the Guardian about it wasn't about the Mexican places, it was about the Indian, and they're all going in food trucks. But what's happened now is that it's come back to the Mexican places, and they are so good. They are so good. So we went to one, I can't remember, one of the burritos tacos. We went the other day. Sybil's got the information. But we went there, and it was after seeing an event at the LACMA. And afterwards, we went and got these tacos, and they were so good. And so some of these Mexican places have moved into bricks and mortar, but they're keeping these food trucks because it helps them get around there, and they go everywhere. And there are a few of the other types of trucks too. Like you mentioned, Bows. That's a great one because that works well in this environment. But the rest of them doesn't, and you don't see the trucks anymore. And in other parts of the country, you do, because that's still going on. So in Portland, you still see it. You see them. We were in Moab the other day. I was doing a road trip, and you see them out there for everyone. And there was a big road, what do you call them, truck fair thing for the. You don't see that in LA anymore. You just don't.
And you did back in the day. That was, I think, the first time I ever saw that. I take that back, because Portland, Oregon, where Karin, is from too, was early on that, where they still do have that, right? Karin, do they still have that?
They still do have a lot of pods and collections of trucks that, even in the winter when it's rainy here, they'll build a common area with picnic tables and covered. And
I've been there. That's fantastic, and it is. But in LA, they don't need to do it.
Yeah.
And they don't, I mean, I'm sure there are one or two places still around, but a lot of them have moved into, bricks and mortar, but a lot of them just are very happy doing what they do. And they do it really well. Yeah. The Mexican places, and those places are so great. Within here, we have two, three kind of, we have a lot of the, what do you call them, the trucks. We have a lot of those, and even down on the road here is about 10 minutes away. We have all the different trucks ready, but they're just serving lunch, and they're serving the workers, and then they disappear. They're not there to serve anybody else, although you can go up to them. But the other things that I did mention was the vendors who sell on the streets, and they just put these things up at night, kind of agree not to agree with the cops who let them. In fact, I've seen the cops buying from them as well. So, and even though they don't have licenses and stuff, they go and the cops come up and buy them. And the food there is spectacular. It really is. And I've stopped and, there's one outside a bar, and I stop afterwards. I buy a burrito, or I buy whatever, and I go home with it. That's phenomenal as well. So there's a lot of different places we have here.
Yeah, where I've seen it too, which is kind of interesting. And, Alex, you can probably chime in on this too, because it probably is something that you guys look at. I don't think it's major competition for your concepts, but it seems like a lot of these breweries and distilleries who can't, don't have the space and won't, or the expertise, do anything about food, are inviting these carts and food trucks and things to come into their environment, so that our people, while they're drinking there, can at least have a choice of something to eat. So, Alex, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, because it's something, definitely in your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that's one of the things where the local laws kind of have helped us as consumers, right? Their liquor license is saying you have to serve food, and the distillery or the brewery is going, look, we're not experts at that. We don't want to run a kitchen. So let's go get these good carts or these good trucks in and do what they do best, and we don't have to manage it. I mean, what was the one that we went to in Nashville? The Maíz de la Vida?
Yeah.
That was the same thing, right? They were outside of a bar, and then the guy ended up with a brick and mortar as his commissary to stock the truck. And then he's serving some of the best Mexican food I've ever had out of the commissary.
It was great.
Right?
It was incredible. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what Simon's describing, right? It's just kind of let's all spiral up instead of down. And it really is working. It's getting traction.
Yeah.
It is. There's one in Dallas, I believe, that's next to a brewery, and they're serving Texas barbecue. And it is very, very good. It is stunning, in fact. And so, you know, I know Texas barbecue, and this is as good as any I've ever had. And so we've been dealing, and it is amazing. So I'm thinking in LA, from looking at LA, we've moved through that kind of period in our life of having all of these trucks. But they come back to the Mexican trucks, which are spectacular. They're really good. So again, if you have chance to see those in action where they're just parked out somewhere, that would be worthwhile. And you go and you stop there while they're serving workers. That would be something that you don't see so much anywhere else.
Hey, Simon, that's an awesome segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is, you know, and again, Sybil had recommended it when we were together a few months ago. I was talking about different things to do in ethnic restaurants, and things are very authentic and blah, 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 blah. She wrote an entire 8.5 by 11 sheet, on the back of all these places to go to. One of which was Korean barbecue, which is only a few blocks from our hotel, which is in downtown LA, Parks. And we went there, and it was fabulous. It was insanely good. And it's on, actually, we're taking one of the board lunches. We're doing one of the board lunches there. I loved it so much. But yeah, talk a second about that if you can.
Yeah, well, I have to say, most of the Korean barbecue and all the other areas in Koreatown rather, are really, really good. And Parks is one of the original. You can see when you park there, it's impossible to try and park there unless you use the valet there, which is a very LA thing. You have to bring your car into the valet, and then you can have your meal. But which is fine. But that is probably one of our favorites of any of the Korean barbecue places. They'll do steak thin. They'll do pork, they'll do all chicken, they'll do all of that. And also they do amazing vegetables as well. Really good vegetables. And they'll have, all the sakes, and they have all of these, this was originally, and it still is probably a thing for Koreans to go and eat at. And if you go in and you're a little bit different, some people will give you not a bad look, but will notice you, because most of them are Koreans who go to eat there.
Yeah.
And so, they are.
We went in the middle of the afternoon, and it was exactly that. And what was really cool is, so they cook at your table, but you don't have to cook. Yeah. They cook it for you, right? And they cook it perfectly because they know what they're doing, right? And so, I mean, Susan and I had, of course, I eat beef. She doesn't eat red meat, so she did vegetables. The vegetable, was unbelievable. I mean, the entire grill was covered. The amount of food that you get, but it's cooked to perfection. It's marinated perfectly. There's sauces. When you sit down, okay, there is an array of about 12 small bowls, okay, of pickled items and all these different kimchi and all the stuff that you have with it.
They call that the panchan. So that's the panchan, and that they bring out little bowls of, kimchi, but bowls of, they'll have a potato salad, Korean potato salad. They'll have Korean corn, or they'll have something going on in each of these. And it's about 20 things that they bring out to you. And you keep asking for them. You'll just keep on, and you'll get them to bring you another thing of the kimchi or the whatever they're bringing. And that's, for me, is one of the special things about, we have a few Korean restaurants in London, but I didn't know them that well, but I had been. But here, it's a whole area. You're talking about, I don't know, 20 blocks or 20, and everything is in there. Yeah. You'll see all the different ones when you walk around. And that's what I love about that, because when you go there, you're not going just to one place and they do a bit of everything. You're going to the one place, this does the barbecue, the next place does the pork neck spine, the soup, the next place does something else. And so the other thing that I would suggest, if you can when you're there, is you go on what they call in Korea, I think it's called inchan, which is a meal. But you go from each place and you go to about 5 or 6 different restaurants and go, can I have one of those? And you'll eat it, and then you'll finish that, and then you go to the next place. And that's a really Korean thing to do.
So that's almost like tapas in Spain, right? Where you go in these little alleyways and you go to different restaurants.
Although the Koreans eat, I mean, the Spanish, we both know Spain, but they eat a huge amount of food. And in each one, they go here, they do something called the army soup, which is the things that the Americans left. So you have this soup which has broken up ramen noodles soaking in the soup. Then you have a little bit of kimchi. You have a little bit of tteokbokki, the little rice balls. You have this, and it's in they call it army soup because it's what they left for the armies to eat when the Americans left. But that's still considered one of the great foods to eat. And this usually finishes about 5 o'clock in the morning. They go from 5 in the afternoon to 5 o'clock in the morning, eating all this stuff. And it's I've done it with the people from Soul Sausage, and you're exhausted at the end of it, but you have a great time.
All right. Well, thanks, Simon, for talking to our group about staying out till 5 o'clock in the morning, because then they won't be in our morning sessions, but that's okay. So
I'm going to be exercising. There's too much to eat, man.
So, yeah. Hey, if you do, Alex, Karen, and Matt, you guys have questions for, Simon or Kelly, please chime in on this or talk to us about what are you looking forward to when we go to LA? Is there something you're like, oh my God, when I'm there, I want to make sure I see X?
I personally am really looking forward to this because back in my old Let Us Entertain You days, we used to go to LA once a year. And when we were working on Big Ball, we used to go there quite often. But I haven't been there for years. So I'm just really excited about seeing what's new and hanging out with everybody.
Yeah.
To be honest.
There's so much new. I have to tell you, man, it was the hardest thing to do is even to try to select our restaurants that we're going to and the things that we'll do on our road trips, because there's just everything. And so we tried to theme it a little bit. You guys will see, and it's going to go up. The agenda is going to go up this week of everything that we're doing, but on the road trips, we've decided to do some that are themed, like Robert Danhai, who I love, and he's so knowledgeable about especially all things Vietnamese, that he's taking a group to Little Saigon, and he'll go to markets so he can share with you some of these unique products that are in there that you just don't see everywhere, and you certainly see it in LA, right? And then we've got another group that's kind of split. It's going to a lot of different primarily some Chinese, but all Asian kind of food, and a little bit of Latin food as well, and some classics like Philippe the Original, which Simon, you turned us on to. We did a few years ago. Yeah, with you on that. They're doing that. Well,
they invented the dipped sandwich.
Yeah,
the French dip sandwich.
French dip.
Yeah, so that's a really great place, and they took us backstage, as it were, and showed us how it was all done. So that's really phenomenal. If you get a chance, that's great.
I love this story of the French dip. You probably remember it way better than I do because I've only heard it one time. But it's like, did it just sandwich fall in, or did they do it intentionally?
No. So what they said was the guy who came in, they say, had a false dentures and they were falling out, and so they dipped it, and so he could eat the sandwich. And that, I mean, who knows?
Right.
But it's a great, and the key to have there is you could have the roast beef, but if you want to try the lamb and blue cheese, that's the one to have. The lamb and blue cheese sandwich that you dip in, and that is absolutely spectacular. It's lovely.
I imagine that group will eat every one of them. They'll try them all.
Good there. It's so good. But the other thing that I was going to mention, and I don't know if you've had a chance to yet, so sriracha is that started in LA.
Right.
So it's not something from Vietnam or from any of those countries. It actually started by a person who came to LA from from Vietnam, I believe, and he gave the name of his town to it, Sriracha. But if you look at the labels on that, it's got Filipino, it's got all the different Asian languages on it, and it was he started making it in LA. And so if you get chance, you can actually go in and see that. The whole area now, the whole town around there smells like chilies. And but you can, I don't know whether you might need to phone him now, but you can go in and see what they do. And it's they kind of take the chilies once they're grown, they take them out and bring them back in. But that's a very special place. So, and I know depending on the restaurants you all own, but everyone around the US has a bottle of sriracha somewhere in their house and in their place. And so that's a good place to go and go and see, because it is really special. And it's an LA thing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to one of our sponsors at King's Hawaiian. And actually in Torrance, they have a manufacturing facility. So one of the tours is going there, which is really cool.
I went down there to go meet with King's Hawaiian, and they're terrific people. That was years ago now, but I went down with one of the people there. We were going to do some work with them, and that didn't turn out. But that's a great place to go as well.
And for our, board members around here too, it's like one thing I'm excited about is Jet Tila. I've tried to work with Jet in the past. It's so hard sometimes to work with them because because Simon and his team for Tournament of Champions and all the other shows end up stealing him in the summertime. You guys do too much in the summer. Stay away from our dates, okay? But so Jet Tila, we tried before, but I'm so happy he's going to be joining us to do one of the demos. And Antonio LaFaso, who Simon introduced me to, thank you very much on that, is going to do the demo on Sunday, and then Jet will do the one on Monday. But I'm really excited about them coming in to talk about their craft. When I was talking to Antonio's people, it was kind of funny because I said, sometimes it's, the demo's theater. We really want to talk to the chef and we want to get inside their head and, what are they looking at? What trends are they looking at? What do they want to do? And he stopped me in the middle. He says, first of all, I got to tell you something, right? Antonia will never let anybody cook for her. Like, he's like, she is going to be the one on that stage cooking that food. Like, she is not going to do that. You probably have some insight to that too, Simon, because you spent a lot of time with her. But
oh yeah, no, we've spent a lot of time, whether it's on Tournament or Cutthroat Kitchen or whatever. And she does, she does want to cook. That's what she is, though. She's an amazing chef. And she's great at telling you about what she's doing. She's got 3 restaurants. One is Italian-American Scopa, which is, I think, the place that you're going to go to. I think.
Yes, we are. We're doing both. Dama and Scopa. We're doing both.
And the one up in the valley, which I've never been to because it's in the valley.
It's too far. Unfortunately, we can't do it. Yeah.
But I've not been to, but I've been to the others many times, and all her food is just great. It's just terrific stuff. So
yeah. So One of the things that we'll bring up, we're getting close to the end here. I promised for the GCIA group we would talk a little bit about Simon. We started yesterday with our conversation with, or whatever day it was, I think it was Monday, with Simon and Kelly, just to make sure we're all on the same page and what we're talking about here, whatever. And we knew we were going to be talking about LA mostly. He started the conversation with his road trip he did with his friend, and he went to Santa Fe. And I'm like, well, this is perfect. We got to talk about this. Why don't you talk about that and the Fred Harvey chain of restaurants?
Well, I think you told me about this. It was the very first kind of chain. I think it was 70 restaurants across all the American train system. Then I think a lot more
the
than
Santa Fe Railroad system. Yeah, it was. It was the first restaurant chain in the United States of America. And it started late 1800s. The one that was in the hotel we're staying at is La Fonda on the plaza. And the La Fonda opened in 1922. And it was right on the railroad tracks. And they had a Fred Harvey restaurant that opened in 1925. And they're experts there. They'll talk about it at our event as well. But Simon, you said you went into the museum that was in town, right?
Yeah, so the museum, which is right around the corner from the plaza, they actually have a mention of Fred and all the stations, and they have a thing of the like a mannequin dressing in the
Harvey girls.
I don't know what she was called. Harvey
girls, right?
And this was the first place that I'd ever seen this before. And I do this food history podcast, and I've decided or want to decide whether I'm going to have him on or one of the people at La Fonda come in and talk about it, because to me that's just amazing. I never knew anything about it until you told me.
Yeah, and they had uniforms, they had all that. So Kelly, you follow all the chain stuff and what's going on. Did you ever know about this?
I think I'd heard of it before, but if you asked me to tell you anything about it, I would not know. So I learned all about this Monday too.
Yeah. I'll send a book to you. I've got one I'm going to send to Simon too, but it's a complete book about the history of it, and it's really amazing. I mean, like this again, I knew nothing about it until we did an event in Santa Fe a few years ago, and it just blew me away. I'm like, why does nobody know about this?
Yeah, it was an incredible thing just to see it, and all. I mean, how many people he employed, and I had no idea that it happened.
Yeah.
So when people see that, and then some of the restaurants, and again, Kelly mentioning what you're saying, they do from the early, wonderful New Mexican, as it were, things. They do very cheap and cheerful, and then they do wonderful breakfast things that we went, and then we went to some in the evening. But I have to say, one of them was, I can't remember, it's just off the plaza. I can't remember the name now. But that was very hit and miss. And so I'll have to send you the name, because you may want to change that. Or this guy was very famous, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Yeah. So anyway, we're about to wrap up here. So, especially Matt, Alex, Karen, closing notes or questions or anything you guys want to talk about, for the upcoming event in LA for our ICCA Summit, 21st year, which is kind of shocking to me. I'm kind of pinching myself, like, where'd those years go? Oh, they're in these wrinkles right up here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like Matt, I'm just looking forward to being in LA and discovering things I haven't seen in years. I think the agenda looks great. The road trips look amazing. So I'm super excited.
It sounds like we need to revisit it. There's too many places to go to.
Oh, we could spend a week there, swear to God, easily.
There are so many places. And there are things about LA that drive me crazy, but eating isn't one of them. That's, or certainly, that would be my way of saying, and that's probably how you should describe this journey.
Matt, any closing comments? All right. So, yeah.
I was muted. No, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. I think it's going to be great.
Awesome. And Kelly, thank you again for working with us. I really love working with you. You bring so much knowledge to our group. Thanks for your information on Chicago as well, but really looking forward to your presentation in LA at our ICCA Summit.
Definitely. I'm excited to see everybody and get to spend a few days with you guys too. And hopefully some of you I'll see at NRA as well.
Yep, awesome. And Simon can't join us in LA, which is ironic because he lives there, but he's going to be traveling abroad for
I'm off to see the Stans, Uzbekistan and all of that area.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Turkey and then down to those areas which we've never been to before. So I'm going to see all of these places with my wife, and we're going to do a lot of research for my podcast. Because but you guys are going to have you're going to have a great time.
And you're going to be with us in October in Santa Fe. So
yes.
Look forward to that.
Yes, I will. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, everyone. Obviously, all the information on our upcoming events are on the website. We'll see most of you in Chicago. We've got a great turnout already for that. Got a very good turnout for LA so far, but it's still early, so we're going to be working on that more. Just want to, Dan Murphy's on here now. Of course, a lot of people he's been in touch with a lot of people, both in GCIA and ICCA, as far as membership recruitment. And Jessica, Mike's with us as well. And that's who we're going to next to show our closing video. But look forward to seeing everybody soon.